In January 2025, a drilling team in East Antarctica hit bedrock. They had been boring through ice for 4 solid years. The core they pulled from the ground was 2,800 meters long. Inside it were air bubbles, trapped and sealed and perfectly preserved. Those bubbles contained atmosphere from over 1.2 million years ago. Not estimated, not modeled, but directly dated using noble gas measurements. Frozen breath from a world that existed before our species did. That single cylinder of ice makes one of the most popular theories on the internet physically impossible, and the true story it tells is more disturbing than the theory it replaces. You have probably seen the video, or maybe more than one. The thesis goes something like this, and it spreads fast. Antarctica was not always frozen, and ancient maps supposedly prove it. The continent was ice-free within historical memory, possibly as recently as the early 1800s. A catastrophic event, perhaps connected to the year without a summer in 1816, flash froze the continent. A global civilization, sometimes called Tartaria, was buried beneath the ice. And now, through an international treaty signed by over 50 nations, the truth is being kept from you. It is a compelling shape. I understand why it spreads, but I have spent weeks inside the source material, and what I found is not what the theory promised. The real history of Antarctica's discovery is stranger, darker, and more deliberately hidden than any lost civilization narrative. It just involves different villains. Let me start with the maps, because that is where every version of this theory starts. The Piri Reis map of 1513. Created by an Ottoman admiral named Ahmed Muhiddin Piri, compiled from roughly 20 source charts, including Portuguese, Arab, and a now lost map drawn by Christopher Columbus himself. The map was presented to Sultan Selim I after the Ottoman conquest of Egypt. It vanished into the Topkapi Palace and was not rediscovered until 1929. It is a genuinely remarkable artifact. The southern portion of the map appears to show a landmass that some researchers have identified as Antarctica. And if that identification were correct, it would mean someone charted Antarctica 300 years before its official discovery. That is the claim. Here is what the claim leaves out. There is a note written in Ottoman Turkish directly on the map. It describes the southern landmass. It says the land is uninhabited, that everything is in ruin, and that large snakes are found there. It adds that the Portuguese did not land on those shores because they are, and I'm quoting the translation, very hot. Large snakes. That is not Antarctica. That is not even close. The mapmaker himself told us what he was drawing, and it was not a frozen continent at the bottom of the world. Cartographic historian Gregory Mackintosh studied the map extensively for his 2000 book published by the University of Georgia Press. He concluded that the southern section is a distorted rendering of Patagonia and Tierra del Fuego, a common feature on early 16th century charts where the South American coastline bends and warps to fit the edge of the parchment. The second map cited is the Oronteus Finaeus map of 1531. This one appears even more convincing at first glance. A large landmass sits at the South Pole. It has bays, inlets, what look like river systems. The resemblance to Antarctica is striking. But Oronteus Finaeus, a French mathematician who held the chair of mathematics at the Collège Royal in Paris, left his own label on it. The continent is marked Terra Australis, with a notation reading recently discovered but not yet fully known. He was referencing Magellan's passage through Tierra del Fuego in 1520. Scholar Franz von Wieser traced Finaeus' entire southern continent directly to the globes of Johannes Schoner, calling the derivation unmistakable. Finaeus was not mapping a frozen secret. He was speculating about unexplored land based on the best geographic theory of his era. Both of these maps entered the conspiracy canon through a single book. Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, published in 1965 by Charles Hapgood, a professor at the University of New Hampshire. Hapgood argued that the maps depicted an ice-free Antarctica, proving an advanced prehistoric civilization had surveyed the globe. Einstein wrote a cautious foreword to an earlier Hapgood book, which gets cited constantly without the context that Einstein endorsed the question, not the conclusion. Hapgood's work became the foundation for Eric von Daniken, then Graham Hancock, then an entire generation of YouTube creators repeating the same claims with better graphics. But Hapgood's analysis required extraordinary manipulation. To make the Finaeus map match Antarctica, He had to rotate the depiction by 20 degrees. He had to move the South Pole by 1,600 kilometers. And the landmass on the map is 230% the size of Antarctica. It also completely lacks the Antarctic Peninsula, a feature over 800 kilometers long that would be visible even under partial ice cover. One book, published 60 years ago, built on forced overlays and selective emission, and every Antarctica conspiracy since has been copying from it without checking the source. Now, I want to be honest about something. I nearly moved on from this topic after the map research. The debunking felt almost too clean, too tidy. 3 days into the primary sources, I had a draft that was sharp, airtight, and completely lifeless. It read like a correction, not a story. And corrections do not change minds because they do not answer the question underneath the question. The question underneath is not really about maps or ice or treaties. It is about why the official history of Antarctica feels thin, why it starts so late, why a continent that massive went unmentioned for so long. That question deserves a real answer, not a dismissal. So I kept digging, and what I found was an industry that history deliberately forgot. Starting around 1790, ships from Britain, Europe, and North America began hunting fur seals in the Southern Ocean. The Chinese fur trade had discovered how to remove the coarse outer hair from seal pelts, leaving a soft undercoat prized for hats and clothing. Demand exploded. Within a single decade, fleets were operating on sub-Antarctic islands in enormous numbers. The cycle was brutal and predictable. A new island would be discovered, ships would descend. Within a few seasons, the seal population would collapse. Then the ships would move further south, chasing the next colony. By 1820, barely 30 years after the industry began, fur seal populations across the Antarctic and subantarctic had been nearly annihilated. Before 1833, at least 7 million fur seals were killed in those waters. 7 million animals reduced to pelts and oil in a single generation. One sealer described leaving the carcasses raw and meaty on the beach for the birds to pick clean. A British naturalist named James Yates wrote in 1829 that the fur seal on the Antarctic Peninsula had been effectively erased. His word, erased. If you live in a city built before 1850, the street lamps that lit your ancestors' way home likely burned seal oil. That industry is the reason Antarctica was found, not ancient knowledge, not secret maps, commerce and slaughter. This is the context that every Tartaria Antarctica video ignores. In 1820, the year the continent was officially discovered, the Southern Ocean was already an industrial killing ground. Hundreds of ships had been operating in Antarctic waters for 3 decades. Sealers were not scientists. They did not publish their routes. They deliberately hid their hunting grounds from competitors because a shared seal colony was a depleted seal colony. Individual captains held detailed knowledge of southern waters and shared none of it. An entire informal geography of the Antarctic existed in logbooks and memories that never entered the official record. So when 3 nations, Russia, Britain, and the United States, all sighted the Antarctic mainland within months of each other in 1820, it was not mysterious coordination. It was the inevitable result of an industry that had been pushing ships further south every single season as populations collapsed closer to home. William Smith discovered the South Shetland Islands in February 1819 entirely by accident, blown off course at Cape Horn. That discovery triggered a rush. By the following summer, the Southern Ocean was crowded with sealers. Bellingshausen, the Russian commander, sighted ice shelves in January 1820. He did not initially believe he had found a continent. Bransfield, the British officer, sighted the Trinity Peninsula that same month. Palmer, the American, was a sealer from Connecticut, searching for new grounds when he spotted the peninsula in November. 3 nations did not converge on a secret. An extinction event drove them to the same shoreline, and the pattern continues. Operation Highjump in 1946. 13 ships, 33 aircraft, nearly 4,700 personnel. Led by Rear Admiral Richard Byrd. The conspiracy framing presents this as a covert mission to investigate ancient ruins or Nazi bases under the ice. The documented record tells a different story, and it is not flattering. The operation's classified objective, later revealed, was consolidating and extending potential United States sovereignty over the largest practicable area of the Antarctic continent. It was a Cold War land grab. The nuclear age had just begun. Military strategists feared a Soviet attack over the North Pole, and polar military capability became a national priority. Historian Diane Olsen Bellinger described the expedition bluntly. She noted that Byrd, by then, was largely a figurehead. The Navy called the shots. Very few of the nearly 4,700 men had any polar experience. The operation was poorly organized and ended early due to approaching winter. It produced roughly 70,000 aerial photographs, a large percentage of which were useless because they lacked adequate ground control points. This was not a treasure hunt. It was a bureaucratic flex wrapped in Cold War anxiety. Then came the Antarctic Treaty of 1959. The conspiracy framing asks why 50 nations would agree about anything and suggests the answer must be concealment. The real answer is gunfire. In 1948, Argentine military forces fired warning shots at British troops in an area both nations claimed. Britain responded by sending a warship and landing Marines. This was not an isolated incident. 7 nations had overlapping territorial claims on the continent, some of them directly conflicting. Chile and Argentina both claimed the same peninsula. Britain claimed territory that overlapped with both. The United States and the Soviet Union were both expanding their Antarctic presence, and neither wanted the other to plant a flag first. President Eisenhower convened the Antarctic Conference specifically because the alternative was a new front in the Cold War, this time on ice. The treaty froze territorial claims, banned military activity and nuclear testing, and established freedom of scientific research. It was the first arms control agreement of the Cold War era, not a pact of silence, a ceasefire between nations that were already pulling triggers. And the claim that you cannot go to Antarctica is simply false. The International Association of Antarctica Tour Operators has coordinated private sector travel since 1991. Dozens of commercial expedition companies run cruises to the Antarctic Peninsula every austral summer. You can fly directly to King George Island from Chile and board a ship on the other side. Tens of thousands of tourists visit every year. You can book a trip right now for anywhere from $8,000 to $30,000. The logistics are expensive, the environment is brutal, but the continent is not sealed. That particular claim survives only because the people repeating it have never bothered to check. Which brings me back to the ice. The thing that started this, and the thing that ends the theory. In 2004, the Epica project drilled a core at Dome C in Antarctica containing ice 800,000 years old. In 2017, a Princeton-led team recovered ice from the Allen Hills region dated to 2.7 million years. In 2025, the same region yielded 6 million-year-old ice, the oldest directly dated frozen atmosphere ever found on Earth. And the Beyond Epica project completed its 1.2 million-year continuous core. Each of these samples was dated using methods independent of modeling: potassium-argon isotope ratios, noble gas measurements, direct physical evidence. The ice is not ambiguous. Antarctica has carried glaciation for roughly 35 million years. The idea that the continent froze in 1816 from a volcanic event, or any event, is not a theory the evidence has weakened. It is a theory the evidence has made physically impossible. You cannot freeze a continent in 4 years and produce ice cores containing million-year-old air bubbles. The geology does not permit it. The chemistry does not permit it. The physics does not permit it. But here is what sits with me. The conspiracy gets one thing right, even if it gets the specifics wrong. The history of Antarctica is a history of concealment. Sealers hid their routes to protect profits. Governments hid their sovereignty objectives behind scientific language. The commercial slaughter that drove Antarctic discovery has been almost entirely scrubbed from popular history. 7 million dead seals and the desperate, undocumented voyages of the men who killed them. That is an erased century. It is just not the one with a catchy name. And there are real unknowns. The deep interior of Antarctica remains undermapped at high resolution. Subglacial lakes, including Lake Vostok beneath nearly 4 kilometers of ice, are real and largely unexplored. Over 400 subglacial lakes have been identified, connected by drainage networks we are only beginning to trace. The Piri Reis map's Columbus source, a chart that no longer exists anywhere in the world, is a genuine cartographic mystery. Not because it showed Antarctica, because it is lost and we do not know what was on it. The oldest directly dated ice on Earth is 6 million years old. It was found near the surface in the Allen Hills, pushed upward by glacial flow hitting buried mountain ridges. Scientists believe even older ice may exist in similar formations, possibly predating the entire Quaternary period. We have not found it yet, These are open doors, honest ones. They do not require you to believe the impossible. They require you to accept that there are things beneath the ice we have not yet read. The difference between a conspiracy and a mystery is whether the answer is already decided before you ask the question. A conspiracy needs you to know what is hidden. A mystery invites you to look. The ice holds 35 million years of planetary memory, compressed into layers thinner than a fingernail, and we've only just learned how to read them. That story, the real one, has barely begun. And unlike the one being sold to you, it does not need a lost civilization to be extraordinary. It already is.